Good morning, everyone. This open meeting of the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee is convening by video conference pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless noted otherwise. This meeting is being recorded. Please be aware that other people may be able to see you and take care not to share your device's screen. Anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Please silence all phones and devices. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment to those members of the public that have joined the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names and be acknowledged by and speak through the chair. The chair will call on those who have raised their hands in the order they were raised. All questions should be directed through the chair. If you're not able to participate in the remote meeting, you may also submit comments to Leah Hill, the Coastal Resilience Coordinator. Her email is lhill@nantucket-ma.gov. I am Mary Longacre, Chair of the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee. Permit me to confirm all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Gary Beller.
Here.
Sarah Boyce.
Here.
Carl Brochert.
Here.
At the moment, I don't see Peter Brace or Matt Fee or Rachel Freeman, who's may be able to join us later. Ian Golding notified us he's not able to join. Jen Carberg.
Here.
I don't see Christy Kickham. Joanna Roach.
Here.
Thank you all. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Leah Hill.
Here.
Vince Murphy.
Here.
And we have Jeff Carlson joining us. Thank you, Jeff.
Good morning.
Anticipated speakers, I will be calling on Doug Rose. So why don't you give us a hello, Doug?
Good morning, everybody.
Thank you. The chair will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. If members wish to engage in a conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. And each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. All right, turning to the agenda, announcements. So I did announce at the May 10th Select Board meeting that I would not be seeking reappointment to the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee. The Select Board in their packet for tomorrow's meeting did note that we have an application received from Doug Rose. So I'd like to give Doug Rose a minute to just talk to the committee and introduce himself.
Thanks, Mary, and good morning, everybody. For those of you that I've not met, I don't know that I've met any of you in person. I've met many of you virtually, but I look forward to meeting with each of you at some point in person. My name is Doug Rose. I hopefully am a familiar name to some of you just from seeing me on Zoom calls. I am a admitted crack groupie. I've really been a big fan of your group, big admirer of all the work that you've done. I told Mary through an email recently that I was sort of surprised and disappointed that there were not more applicants. Understanding that I'm not official yet, I guess I should be cautious and just saying who knows what the Select Board will decide. But if they choose to add me to your group, I'll be really proud to join your team. And I would very much like to do whatever I can to kind of help the team move forward. My background, I'm a career marketing, data analytics, and communications professional, now very happily retired. So have some time, some time to spend on things that are of interest to me. And I have been a follower of this group since its inception. Probably not maybe half the meetings I've made it, but going forward, obviously I'll be more of a regular attendee. For me, what has really appealed to me about the mission of this group is that it flies at an altitude that is very appealing to me. It's not lost in the weeds like regulatory commissions and committees are, but it also is working on very weighty topics that are of strategic importance to the future of the island. And so that kind of appeals to me. It's the right kind of mindset for my brain. And like I said, I just really look forward to doing whatever I can to help the team move forward. If there's data analytics tasks that are sort of thankless and not very appealing to others, I'd be keen to dig into those kinds of things. And likewise, anything that relates to communications, I'd love to be able to be an active participant in those kinds of discussions. So anyway, that's a little bit about me. And thank you for the time, Mary.
Thank you, Doug. Good luck on Wednesday night.
Thanks.
Actually, I don't think they're making appointments tomorrow. That's a little bit later in the month. Also noting that Arcadis presented the Coastal Resilience Plan at an event, the 2023 Association of State Floodplain Managers Annual Conference earlier this month in Raleigh, North Carolina. I do think there will be a recording available in the future, but I didn't see it when we created the agenda. So very interesting again to see that our Coastal Resilience Plan is affecting other communities. Certainly something that we hoped for. Vince, do you have anything else you want to say about that event? May not.
I spoke the person who assisted on developing the CRP, Devin McGee. She was the one that presented it. I assisted her with developing the presentation, as I was also supposed to present. Unfortunately, the workload I had here was a bit too much to allow me to go, so she presented it alone. And it was a wonderful presentation by all accounts, even though I have not seen the recording yet either.
Great, thank you, Vince. Next item on agenda, approval of minutes from March 14th, March 28th, and April 11th. Great to get caught up. Leah, can you put March 14th on the screen? Are there any comments from committee members on the minutes from March 14th? If there are none, we'll take a motion to approve.
Move approval. It's Matt.
Thank you, Matt. Who's second?
Second.
Thank you, Gary. Roll call vote. Gary Beller,
Aye.
Sarah Boyce,
Aye.
Carl Borchert,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Jen Carberg,
Aye.
Joanna Roach,
Aye.
and Mary Longacre, aye. Thank you. Minutes from March 28th. All right, any comments or questions on the minutes from March 28th? If there are none, we'll take a motion to approve.
Move approval.
Thank you, Matt.
Second.
Thank you, Joanna, for seconding. Roll call vote. Gary Beller,
Aye.
Sarah Boyce,
Aye.
Carl Borchert,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Jen Carberg,
Aye.
Joanna Roach,
Aye.
and Mary Longacre, aye. And then finally, the minutes from April 11th. Any comments or questions on these minutes? If there are none, we'll take a motion to approve.
Move approval.
Thank you, Matt.
Second.
All right, I'll give Matt a second for that one. Roll call vote. Gary Beller,
Aye.
Sarah Boyce,
Aye.
Carl Borchert,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Jen Carberg,
Aye.
Joanna Roach,
Aye.
and Mary Longacre, aye. Thank you. All right, so this is essentially our focused meeting on the Sconset Bluff. We took a field trip on May 9th to go view the conditions from Codfish Park all the way up to almost Sankaty. And we did take some drone recordings. We recorded Jeff Carlson, who was giving us information about the conditions there. And we also had maps, so aerial views with the property lines available for the group while we were doing the traverse. Those recordings are not yet compiled, but it's definitely something we want to put together so that members who are not able to attend can also have the experience. In addition, we have references in the agenda to the two meetings that the Select Board and Concom had together. And there's also a link to the notes that were up on the wall where the participants offered their suggestions and those notes supported the discussion. So those are available to view. And then finally, there was also the Arcadis presentation to the Select Board on the Baxter Road long-term planning analysis. We have a link to that recording. So all of those resources and all of the history that's available. What do we want to discuss? There may be members who were not able to go on the trip that have questions, or members who did go on the trip that have questions they weren't able to ask then because that was not a public meeting. We do have Jeff Carlson here to assist with that. Where would we like to start? Gary?
Since I was not able to be on island at the time, I'm curious to know what some of you folks who were there, what may have changed your views, or at least what surprised you, or what new and exciting did you learn by actually walking the walk? I'd be interested.
Yes, Carl?
Sarah, do you want to go first? Doc,
No, it's okay. You can go ahead.
I was supposed to say Ms. Boyce, but
It's doctor, but that's okay.
Doctor.
Just kidding.
Well, I won't be too long. First time in many, many years I ever took a walk down that beach. And the situation that I came away with was that this 900-foot section of geotubes, they were working, and the bluff was vegetated above them, and they were doing their job, and it was working. The rest of it on each side was not working very well. And that's what I found, and I witnessed it firsthand. And I came away from that couple of hours much more educated. I appreciated Mr. Carlson's analysis and answering questions. I think there were a lot of excellent questions raised, but my personal opinion after doing that site visit, after having watched the news and read the paper for the last 20 or 30 years about this situation out there, was that the geotubes are working and they have stabilized the bluff where they are.
Thank you, Carl. Sarah?
Thanks, Mary. Yeah, so Gary, I think one thing that was really interesting to see, and that was striking from all the times looking at the maps, like looking from the top down and reading the different reports and what happens where, to being on the ground and seeing the change from property owner to property owner. And Jeff was really great about answering questions about the history. As we're going through, we're like, okay, when was this one done? When was this one done? And seeing both, this is just a broad general observation, but seeing even before getting to the geotubes and after, and then the different strategies used by different people, it put together all the things that we know about how, erosional processes, the toe of the dune, and, storm water coming from the top and things. And I think just putting it together and being on the ground and seeing it, going through, like, this was done 10 years ago, this was done 30 years ago, or whatever it might be, that was really striking. And I think the take home for me, part of it was the need for a unified effort in that area, or at least a plan moving forward that included all the interested parties. Because I think the clear area of one homeowner doing one thing, and then where they stop doing that, it obviously affects the other people. And then the other thing I thought that was really striking to me was where the kind of letting the dune do its thing, and where the dune was built up and where there's natural dune frontage and vegetation, and how that seems so much more stable than the areas that are being actively managed constantly. So that was just part of my general impression. I would encourage you, Gary, when you do come back, if you're not back already, to just take a walk down there and just kind of see the differences moving from north or south to north and north to south, wherever you go.
Thank you, Sarah. I'll add one of the things that I hadn't really thought about before was that every single effort needs maintenance. We hear a lot about the geotube maintenance, but all of the other variety of protection solutions also need maintenance, and I hadn't really given that much thought before. So we saw a lot of different attempts. Some were, very small alterations. Some were more medium alterations. Some were extreme alterations that, created conditions that wouldn't be stable in a natural environment, like the geotubes. But all of them need maintenance because the nature continues to affect them. And so that was something I hadn't really thought about before. Jen, you were on the walk. Do you want to share any thoughts?
I was not on the walk, no.
I apologize. Yeah. I think then that's the three of us who were there who have shared our thoughts. Matt?
Yeah, no, I wasn't on it either. I've walked it multiple times at this point now. I've done the goat track down the front at one point, and I'm lucky to be alive from that walk. Yeah, I think your points, sort of are good ones, that everything needs maintenance. And no matter what happens out there, it needs to be looked at globally, which is how we're trying to look at it, is with Arcadis, is how do we do the right thing? I think, and I think what we've tried to strike, what the town has tried to strike is I think realistically, this is what Retreat's gonna look like. It's gonna be messy, it's gonna be hard, it's gonna take longer than some people want. But I think that I think this will last, if we keep geotubes or expand geotubes or do something else there, we're gonna get some time, but at some point they're going to most likely affect other people, and so it's important that we have that written clearly into whatever we do, and that at that point we have to have the retreat and other things figured out. And so, I think that's the view that the town is taking and the select board is taking, or has taken. And I think, and I think we've learned a lot for when we do other areas. You can't do an area, like you can't do an area one lot at a time. You need to look at what's the right thing to do for this entire area. And I'm not and we have looked at costs, but I was recently, someone shared Rodanthe, North Carolina, and how they looked at their costs, and they were actually looking at the total, they were looking at the cost if they lost all those houses, what the value of those houses were versus the cost to beach nourish. In Arcadis, we were looking at the cost to the tax base, how much taxes might we lose, but they also in there had the value of the property. So the tax base thing, it's shared by everybody else. It's such a small segment, it isn't substantial. But I think when you look at this area or potentially other areas by the value of the properties that exist, that's when you start looking, saying, okay, that's $156 million worth of value that's in danger in the next, by 2100. I think it's 40 something million by 2050. You look at that versus what would it cost to do something there, do the right thing there. I think and then you look at what do those, what is that contributing to our, what is being able to walk to the lighthouse? What do these properties and these people contribute to our economy? All the other aspects, you have to sort of look at that. If it's one or two houses and it's 50 million, it's pretty easy. But I think I've always said all along that Baxter Road is a tough call because it's a tweener. It's not downtown, it's not the sewer plants, but it's the next closest thing. And so I think that's that's where we've really been struggling. And I think that we're trying to strike a balance that, which is, and we're trying to learn by this so that we don't, repeat mistakes over and over again. So I'm glad everybody walked it. And as I've said, I've been there. I tried to go that day, but I wasn't feeling great. Didn't want to get you guys sick. And so I think, I think it's good we did it. And then we should kind of figure out, is there a role for us here? That's my other question. What is our role? Is there a role, in some manner? So to either asking for more information or reviewing the information or making a recommendation to the select board, is there something that we as a group feel comfortable and want to do? I'm not saying we do that today. It might take a little more thought than just today, but something for trying to plant a seed. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Excuse me. Before we go to Carl and then Sarah, I just want to say value is a very tricky concept because the question is when. The value changes every time a house is sold. You would potentially reassess the rest of the neighborhood to reflect that sale. And it can sell for more or it can sell for less. So the trying to pin a value on property is difficult. And in particular, I think because some of the houses might end up being moved off the property. So the house continues to exist, but the land doesn't. Well, then how do you count the value if the house still exists on a different lot? So I just think value is a very tricky metric to use as we're trying to compare. Cost is also tricky because it's cost over what time period? You know, is it the initial cost? Is it the cost over 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? Is it the cost until we can't do that solution anymore? Is it the cost in perpetuity? So both sides of that cost versus value can be tricky to evaluate. Carl?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Fee. Mr. Fee, I don't know if you had a chance to look at the article that Ms. Hill forwarded about England and what they do as far as levels of support for property owners on the coast. If I remember correctly, there's several different tiers that the government helps people with. And basically my question is, has the select board and the town, if they had a chance to look at the article, that would be very helpful, but is there some kind of possibility of the town government or the select board or state or federal government assisting property owners on the coasts with options as far as how much the government's going to kick in help? This is kind of a confusing question, but I'm trying to make it clear. The UK government has, say, 4 different levels of assistance for beachside owners, and the town may not be in the position to do that. It might be the federal government. The US doesn't have that as far as I'm concerned, but is there any kind of structure that the town and the select board and the town manager can assist these folks, or is it basically state or federal? Maybe someone else in the committee can answer that.
Well, I'll take a quick pass at it, and then I'll let Vince fix up anything I get wrong. But I think the town would hope that would come out of this committee. This is not something that Libby or the select board are spending a lot of time looking at. We've looked at the various impacts of out in Baxter Road. We looked at some of the other issues, for different areas as they come up, but we're not at this point haven't really looked to the future. We've done the planning, we've done the coastal resiliency plan, but I think the town hasn't set aside money for that. I would say the federal has some money, and I know Vince can tell you he's having conversations, et cetera, but it's not going to be nearly enough. So what we have to think about, in my mind, is how do we set up a fair way to, sort of better certain areas, and how, and I agree with Mary that the values change, but you don't want a situation where everything is on the tax base and then you're spending $100 million to save one house, so you want to make sure that you have to look at the values as they exist at that time. You have to look at the future potential costs and impacts and then make those hard decisions. I think we should figure that there's probably not a ton of money, and if there is, it's probably going to be earmarked, I would think, for something like the downtown area for the boat, or for the sewer beds, or for the airport. I'm not thinking that it's going to be a lot of money to, for these outlying areas. I mean, I hope I'm wrong, but it's sort of through the Army Corps or through the federal or state government. Maybe I'm wrong and that'll change, but I think we have to be thinking about this as how is the best way for us to do it ourselves. How can we be self-reliant and resilient ourselves? So.
Thank you.
Sarah had her hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Matt. This was sort of a follow-up from something you said a little while ago about what role do we as CRAC want to play, and or what do we think we have in discussions about the Sconset Bluff and that kind of thing. And I kind of wanted to turn it to you a little bit from the select board. What would be useful, so maybe, in the ensuing conversation, maybe it's, more of the recommendations about the retreat and maybe supporting coastal homeowners or vulnerable homeowners. But you know, we, through the coastal resiliency plan, have made that, there's that list of priorities of the projects and things. But I'm interested from you, Matt, and from the select board, like, is there a priority list of like, what would you like us to focus on as in these meetings, right? So there's the boots on the ground projects that need to happen, but then there's these thought conversations. Is it more useful to focus on the specifics of like the Sconset Bluff area, or do you want us to come up with some ideas and discussions around the retreat and relocation? I'm interested to hear that. What would be most useful?
Matt?
That's a bit of a loaded question. I know you didn't mean it that way, but I don't know if I can speak for, we haven't voted on this. I think I think the board is following CRAC's recommendations and as much as it can, but I think this is also, I think this is an issue that has been sort of contentious, and it would be nice to, in my mind, it would be nice to find a path forward that didn't include, tons of litigation, that allowed us to have, a path forward that was cooperative as much as possible, so that we were, getting hold harmless agreements and public access, and maybe this wouldn't happen right away, but maybe there's a nonprofit that's formed that's, people can donate to, or donate their buildings to if they can't move them, or donate their land to after they do move it, or, transfer development rights to another area. There's a lot of things that still need to be fleshed out, that this could be a great sort of example, a great way to start thinking about it for other areas. So I think that would, I think it does deserve, some attention. I think so, but I'm not sure what capacity, or willingness this board has. I mean, I think I can tell you that the staff itself, and I'll let Vince can talk, Vince Alia can talk for themselves, but this is, the more work that we can, sort of help with, or, is there, or direct, I think the better it will be. And if we could put some of these things to bed to get on to the next one, that would be great. And I don't think you're not gonna put a hard issue, aside if you ignore it. When I tell my kids is, all it does is, if you ignore something like that, it comes back to you later even worse. And so I think this is one of those issues that we as a community, and we as CRAC and the select board need to, delve into and get behind us, find a good solution, and then, and be working on the next things. So I sort of ducked it a little bit. I'm turning into a politician, sir. I ducked it a bit, but sorry.
Gary?
So in thinking about this, and I read those articles, thank you, Leah, for sending them around, about what's going on in England and stuff, where it's basically everyone who looks at this looks at the cost benefit. And then, of course, they were talking about, and I think we were talking away as well, there are different strategies that you look at the property and you say, some you defend, some you're giving up on. And I think, I don't know if the third one is managed retreat, but is that what we're talking about when we talk about Sconset Bluff? Are we really saying it's managed retreat? And the question is, how do we manage that retreat? Or does someone think we can actually defend that forever? Which to me would be a significant financial burden on the entire island. So it just seems to me that watching what's going on with the normal erosion that goes on and rising sea levels, it probably a strategy of managed retreat. And what will it cost us to manage that retreat? And how will that weigh against the other important items that are important to the island? We've already come up with our list. Our priority list is done. It's there. It's part of the plan. It's our top 40. And the Sconset Bluff is not number one, obviously. So somewhere along the way, it's an important thing to worry about, but we do have to look at the priorities for saving the island and where those funding, to me, the cost of funding managed retreat is a very significant issue. If the when I keep thinking about the fact that the folks who live out there have decided to no longer support the funding for the continuation of the geotubes, then if they've given up on it, where is the town going to get the funding to continue even in a managed retreat scenario?
Vince?
It's probably worthwhile at this point just outlining where various projects stand so that, you know, we can all have a kind of a simple understanding, kind of at the 30,000 foot level. So fine, the existing geotubes are still in place. They've been found to be out of compliance by the Concom, and that is its own separate track. But we're going through the removal planning at the moment, and that is what SPPF are working on with the Conservation Commission. So that is the kind of major toe protection. As you've already seen, there's other toe protections and other bluff protections that are in place on other properties in the area that are still going to have to continue in some shape or form. On top of the bluff, we're already looking at to the future, and we're already planning for alternative access. At the select board, what was it, Matt, about 3 weeks ago, Arcadis presented the most recent update on the alternative access planning. There were 3 routes that were in the offing that we're trying to figure out which is the best for. Town staff and Arcadis made a recommendation on Route A. There was no perfect route, but that was the one we chose to move, that the select board chose to move forward on, with inherent knowledge that there are problems with it and that we can, I'm going to try and quote Matt poorly, that we're going to have wiggle room in it. So there's this one corridor, we're going to try and make that work as best we can for the neighbours in that area. We've also separately started to engage with US Army Corps of Engineers to see if see how their process works. There's no, this is an ongoing thing, it's not concluded. So the best thing I can do at this point is just outline how the US Army Corps works and what we've been trying to understand from their point of view, and if this would be something they'd be interested in. So one of the programs that they have is called a Section 14 program. We looked at it. We wanted to discuss with their Region 1, FEMA Region 1 area manager, how this might work. And essentially, if we were to look for assistance on this, and he said, let's play best case scenario. It's kind of a rolling thing. There's no set timeline to it, so that it could take them a few years to even come to assess it. Then if they did an assessment, there's a chance that, a pretty good chance, that very little would happen, because small numbers of buildings and homes versus, say, a larger area, say around Boston, is where they really want to focus their time and efforts and finances. So there's an inherent problem with the Baxter Road area. But let's play best case scenario, like was done on, like we've been trying to think out with them. It could take 2 to 3 years for them to get an assessment. And then they said, right, just imagine this scored highly. Then it would be roughly 5 years after that before they get to do any construction. They were thinking in terms of best case scenario, 5 to 7 years, maybe 10 years before they get anything done. And that is kind of the way that's just how US Army Corps work. They also said quite openly that they've had projects that have been under request for decades, as in 2 and 3 decades, without ever rising up the pile because they just don't score highly enough. So this is the problem that the Baxter Road area, or pretty much any project from the US Army Corps on Nantucket, would have to look at, would be faced with. It might just not score highly enough to ever be a project that they could bring anything to do with the construction on. So realistically, with such long timelines and low probability of scoring, we're still talking it out, we're still thinking about it. It's not a dead idea, but it just presents more challenges than the US Army Corps have any interest in.
Thank you, Vince. Carl?
I just had a very brief comment. From my perspective, this isn't really a question to anybody, but I consider myself an expert on offshore wind energy. It's an engineering marvel. The geotubes are kind of an engineering marvel. I'm a problem solver. I'm a solutions guy. I need to work hard to find solutions to problems on the island and other areas, but you know, the geotubes are an engineering solution. And does it cost more to maintain them if we expanded them to protect the bluff, say from Sankaty Head Beach Club to Codfish Park? Or does it cost more to move Baxter Road and to deal with that? You know, 30, 40, 50 million to do that in 5-10 years. I mean, these are the situations that we're getting into. I'm a new member. You folks probably have a lot more experience with this than I do, but I have a lot of experience with large industrial power plants at sea with wind power. That is an engineering solution to address global warming emissions from power plants. The geotubes are an engineering solution to address erosion on the coastal bluff. And just for everybody's food for thought, I mean, how do we agree with that? It's been so sad to watch the polarization and the fighting and the division on this for decades. But look, I mean, for me personally, I'm trying to stay positive. I try to find solutions, and the geotubes are an engineering solution that has been difficult to deal with. It's too bad that two different committees or boards in the town are arguing about it. I'm not going to comment on that, but for me personally, from my perspective of massive industrial power plants at sea, I know a few thing or two about that after 22 years in the business, but we need to consider solutions here. And the geotubes are a possible solution, but I'm sorry about it. And I'm sorry to see everybody so polarized, but moving Baxter Road for 10 years at 50 million is a lot of taxpayer money and a lot of headaches. But what about if we expanded the geotubes and use that as an engineering solution? And that's a big headache to a lot of folks. But I'm just trying to be a problem solver and find solutions. And I think all of us are responsible for that, to advise the select board and the town. And we do have priorities of the steamship and the airport runway near the coast. And we have the sewer treatment plant near the coast. Those are big priorities. And I appreciate the comments from Mr. Murphy about the Army Corps procedure. You know, things can grind along for decades or years. How many years will it take to move Baxter Road? So I'm just going to wrap it up. And it's like, what about solutions? Can we please try to take the emotional fury down and find solutions? And the geotubes are one solution, but unfortunately they may be removed, and that's going to be disastrous in nor'easters in the wintertime and stuff. But my business is specifically large industrial power plants at sea, but that's an engineering solution. And the geotubes are solution, and removing the road is going to be really tough and time consuming and expensive.
Thank you, Carl. I wanted to provide the context that's in the Coastal Resilience Plan, just for our information. So we do have 4 recommendations for Sconset. There's a recommendation to study feasibility of nearshore breakwaters, which would reduce the energy that's hitting the beach and therefore reduce the erosion. There is a recommendation for Baxter Road relocation planning, which we're familiar with. There's a recommendation for Codfish Park dune restoration and for Sconset Bluff dune restoration. And for Sconset Bluff, it says dune restoration and construction to mitigate bluff erosion and increase resiliency. Natural dunes with vegetation are appropriate. Project includes need for ongoing nourishment and maintenance of the dune and interval determined through the design process. So those are the recommendations for Sconset that we have in the Coastal Resilience Plan. But it's important to remember the context of how we developed the plan. And that was to look into the future and not to focus on the areas where we already had defined a problem and were working on solutions. So for instance, the geotubes were not really looked at as part of the Coastal Resilience Plan as something that the plan was supposed to address. The South Shore Road, excuse me, not South Shore Road, the eroding road on the South Shore, I'm sorry, I'm blanking, Sheep Pond Road. The Sheep Pond Road situation was not specifically addressed in the Coastal Resilience Plan. The situation in Mattocket with the erosion at the end of Mattocket Road, I think, was not specifically addressed because what we were told was that those were already areas where we had ongoing work to determine what the right solution was, and that wasn't what we needed the coastal resilience plan to do. Vince, if I am not stating that correctly, please provide more clarity.
Yeah, no problem with any of that. That was fine.
So I'm just providing that for background. We do have the coastal resilience plan, which recommends the focus on the essential infrastructure as the top priority. But I wanted to give that context for Sconset specifically. Thank you. Matt.
Yeah, just a couple comments. One of the recent studies did look at breakwaters, and they were seen as much more expensive as an option, so that was kind of recommended against. Gary was talking about costs, and I will say we didn't delve into the costs on Baxter because they were going to be paid by the neighborhood. And so it wasn't a cost benefit for the town necessarily because we weren't going to pick up the tab. Now, I'm not sure we'll pick up the tab now because other things are important, but I think there, Baxter Road and anywhere else, a certain percent should be bettered. If people are getting a benefit, they should be paying for it, which will allow us to stretch any limited dollars we vote or get further for something else. But I think so that when we didn't really look at it quite the way you would in a business necessarily, I think there is a chance that, no, there isn't a chance. I think there is a way to, we have to figure out how are we going to do it neighborhood wise and have a coastal resiliency district in various neighborhoods. How do you define the district? How do you charge in the district? If you're closer and getting more benefit, you should probably pay more than someone's further away. So there's issues like that still need to be studied and figured out. The other point I wanted to make was that the two other points. The plan, Mary was exactly right that those issues that were underway weren't thrown into the plan because they were already underway and we were assuming they were going to be dealt with. I think, relocation we're working on, breakwaters expensive, relocation we're working on. Dune restoration was part of dune restoration was part of what we were going to bring to the Concom. If we did it, if we did an expanded system, it wasn't going to just be geotubes from stem to stern. It was going to be various other options in different areas. And so I think, we were looking at those, natural alternatives where appropriate. And I think that is something that if it does go forward, should happen. And the other point that's a really big one is that none of this is going to happen quickly. Whether it's relocating the road, whether it's trying to get the Army Corps, et cetera, to help us, it's all going to move at the speed of government, which means it's going to be slow. So we can't assume that it's going to happen really quickly. So whatever decisions we're making, we have to sort of just bake that into the recipe. We have to assume it's going to take a while. And what I'm glad that Vince is talking to the Army Corps, even if they aren't going to help us with this, with Baxter, et cetera, if that, or something else, even if we don't score high enough, if they can point us in the right direction on sand sourcing, which is going to be a huge thing all around the island, not only Baxter Road, if they can, if that can be on the radar screen and they could be pointing us in the right direction, and that happens over the next couple of years, then it will have been discussions that have been well worth it. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Sarah?
Thank you, Mary. Yeah, I had just a few points. First of all, to kind of reiterate what Matt said, maybe in a little different way, I was really happy to hear that, Vince, that you've been having conversations with the Army Corps and kind of starting that from now. But I don't know if you said this, but I got the point, or I got the tone that you were thinking like it's going to take forever and that we may not score high enough. I don't want that to be abandoned as an option. And maybe you weren't saying that, but that's kind of, I just wanted to make sure, because as Matt was saying that, all of this stuff is going to take forever and just the timeline of government is slow. We know that. And also things change as we, even from 10 years ago, projects about coastal resiliency and kind of were slower and there were fewer options. So I just want to, put the word in, or just raise my hand to say, like, just keep at it. And I think having these conversations, because even if it takes 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, then we're at least getting somewhere. And I think, whatever they're able to provide, whether even if it's not at the construction phase and it's at the input phase, having an outside entity comment on a lot of this is actually probably useful to think about, taking that maybe the emotional side out of it, and all of our committees are a committee of other people that live here, and that's a good thing. But I think for certain touchy subjects, having outside expertise just weigh in different ways would be super useful. My other point I wanted to make was kind of addressing something that Carl said, and I don't know, Carl, if this is something that you were thinking about, but I don't think any of these solutions are mutually exclusive. It's not like if we're focusing on the engineering solutions that we can then don't have to worry about road relocation. All of these things have to be considered in concert. And that's just what I've been learning more and more, because no matter how much money we put into solutions it's really buying time in that area. Just the erosional energy is so much there. As I understand it, this is my opinion, but I think the sooner that we start, if part of our charge is commenting on relocation plans, which it sounds like it's going to be a big thing for us moving forward, I think the sooner we start, the better, because it's going to be, yes, we're talking about Sconset today and Baxter Road, but this is a conversation that's going to be had on a broader island-wide scale. And so I think, I don't want to abandon that conversation for the sake of talking about additional solutions.
Thank you, Sarah. Gary?
So just let me get on a very practical level. Let me just ask Vince or Jeff if they know the answer to this. Let's just pick the dates from June 1st of this year to the end of the year, December 31st, okay? So could I have an answer to the question is, what is happening with the geotubes now? Is anyone maintaining them? If nothing is done with them, if this battle between the Conservation Commission and the locals continues for the next 6 months, does anything have to be done? Is anyone maintaining the geotubes? Does anyone have to do anything? Suppose the issue doesn't get resolved between the locals and the Conservation Commission. What happens between June 1 and December 31 of this year? Does it matter? I mean, are they going to stay in place? Are they eroding quickly, or will they stay in place and they just won't be getting refurbished the way we were hoping they would have been done by the local community? What's the answer to that?
Jeff, are you able to address Gary's question?
Sure, I'm happy to try to address it as best I can. Some of those parts don't really, I would say, have answers yet, but currently, those geotubes are, slated for removal. The Conservation Commission ordered those removed based upon the fact that they weren't being properly maintained. I'm happy to get into the history of that, but I don't want to bore everyone to tears either. But they've been ordered removed. Those removal protocols are being developed. There have been some efforts to try to maybe reinvigorate the discussion around maintaining them and keeping them there. SPPF has done some pretty light maintenance on those. They haven't been adding sand, but they did recover them with sand that was existing on the geotubes that were there earlier this spring. I know when we were out there, there was a little bit of an area on what's the lower, not the lowest tier, but the next one up. So it's either, if you count from the bottom, it's the second tier. If you count from the top, it's the third. But that tier that's there, that was exposed in part along the way and on part of our walk. But as of right now, there's not a really active maintenance schedule. There's someone contributing the yearly contribution of sand. So hopefully that answers that a little bit. Or I might have just made it more murky.
Thank you, Jeff. Further thoughts? All right, so I'm going to try an experiment here. I don't know how this is going to go. originally, we were asked to provide our recommendations as to best next steps. So is there a statement or a number of statements that we want to propose, discuss, and potentially adopt as a recommendation? And I will start with what's in the coastal resilience plan that's most relevant to this discussion, the Baxter Road relocation planning. So for instance, would somebody want to propose a statement saying that we support relocation of Baxter Road as recommended by the coastal resilience plan? That seems like a fairly easy statement to start discussion on. If somebody wants to make that, I'm not going to do that myself. Sarah?
I'm not prepared to make that statement, but I think I would say I would personally support planning or that we support that this should be explored. I don't want to say that we support any one. We haven't discussed in great detail any one of the different solutions that's been chosen or anything like that. So that would be a statement I would be comfortable with.
For
Support it, Mary.
sorry, hang on a minute, Gary. The coastal resilience plan recommendation is Baxter Road relocation planning for and implementation of road relocation, including acquisition of easements, access and maintenance agreements, finalization of road alignment, and development of final designs for construction. So yes, it is a planning recommendation. Gary?
I would support that. And by the way, I want to congratulate Matt Fee and the Select Board for coming to a decision at that recent meeting where they had to make a decision as to which route they would go to revamp Baxter Road. And notwithstanding the fact that there were 3 different community groups battling about it, the Select Board stepped up and said, you know, we're going to take the recommendation of Arcadis and we're going to move forward on it. So I congratulate the Select Board for making a choice. So keep the project moving. That was part of our plan, and they should continue doing that. It's not going to happen overnight, as we all know, and there'll be resistance from neighbors and problems getting easements, but I think we have to proceed with that.
Thank you, Gary. Further comments? Carl?
I would say that that's a appropriate thing for this committee to support. However, I still am hanging on to a little bit of language or support for possible engineering solutions to erosion issues on the bluff, sort of in the retreat will not save Sconset mode. Maybe this committee is going to agree not to have any engineering solutions on the bluff and just move the road. That's kind of a simple way to put it, but me personally and professionally, I would kind of support some possibility of engineering solutions on that bluff. Maybe not as intense as the geotubes and controversial, maybe netting and beach grass and Rosa rugosa and vegetating the bluff instead, or core bags or whatever. But I still would, to summarize, I would still say, well, me personally, I would think that we need to think about some engineering solutions out there in addition to moving the road.
Thank you, Carl. So just for clarity, my intent was not to make that the only statement. It would be a statement to begin the discussion. We could build on it with additional statements if that was what we wanted to do. Matt?
Yeah, I think this statement is fine as long as we build on it, Mary. I think it's, as we discussed, it's very nuanced, and I think sort of, you don't want to just be like, oh, see, all we want is the engineering solutions, or all we want is the road to be moved, and then we don't have to worry, because that's not true. One thing we've heard, we sort of are hearing from some of the Concom members was that they wish that the town had brought the other alternatives, and that they had an opportunity to discuss sort of softer alternatives, or or dunes, etc. They, so they were only given, sort of the geotubes. They wish there had been other options, and and I think that was the plan, is to go forward with the options. And so when we start to, do we want to have any of those other things explored? And I think we have to look. I would also like to talk about this as this is not permanent. This is, we're doing our short-term and medium-term view by discussing this. The long-term may be something different. And so I think, if we don't, I hope that we vote on other things too, or that we get a letter, come back with a letter that we all can sort of play around with. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Sarah?
Yeah, thank you, Mary. I agree that I would I like this discussion now. I am nervous about us all agreeing to something right now that then is going to go for the select board, but I think putting together a draft right now is really helpful. The things I'm thinking of right now are, in addition to, I think the Baxter Road piece that you read from the CR is a good place to start. I hesitate to be super prescriptive about the solutions that we would be willing to put in. And so maybe my suggestion would be to make it a little bit vague so that we don't exclude anything, like, we support the relocation planning, blah, 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 and then say not to the exclusion of other potential interventions or something along those lines. But my other question about this is, what is the scope? It's easy to say Baxter Road relocation because that is a specific road with a specific length. But when we're talking about Sconset Bluff, like the geotubes are a specific area that was paid for privately. And so it's that private, group of homes. There's a lot of other homes that are in that area that are, I'm gesturing with my hands as if it's a map, but there's a lot of other areas that are part of that erosional area of Sconset Bluff. And so I think if we're talking about, if we say anything in this statement about solutions or what we do and do not support as the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee, I think we should just talk about the area. And once again, I don't think it should be prescriptive, like from, number whatever to number whatever in terms of the street. I think it should be the geographical or, ecosystem area, like what is the bluff, like that, more the physical landscape as opposed to property by property. Because I think, being a committee that works for the whole entire island, I don't feel like I work in this sense for any one homeowner. And so thinking of more that geographic edge. So just, I don't know what language that is, but I think thinking of that scope, I think would be important.
Thank you, Sarah. I'll add one of the things that I learned a bit more about on our site visit was that Sconset Bluff continues northward for quite some distance. If we're only protecting private property and houses, for instance, we are not protecting Sankaty Lighthouse. That is north of the houses. The property continues all the way up to, not property, the bluff continues all the way up to Sacajah, essentially. And so we're not really discussing the full extent of Sconset Bluff when we're talking about Baxter Road, to your point, Sarah. How does the committee want to proceed? We could take a stab at a statement. I think that would be an individual homework assignment to each of us create a potential statement that you individually would be willing to support. We'll compile those and try and make a committee statement that we can bring back for further discussion. We can continue here with any statements that somebody wants to make or any proposals that somebody wants to make. We can continue to talk about scope. This is up to the committee. Carl, and then Sarah.
I would feel comfortable with some homework and coming back and discussing our personal statements. And if we could do it in a reasonable amount of time, that's my personal opinion. I would like to take some homework and work on a statement.
Thank you, Carl. Sarah?
Thank you, Mary. I agree about doing the homework. I think would be really good this has been thoughtful. Just to bring up other ideas to the group, we in the Coastal Resiliency Plan and from the work that Arcadis did, talking to the community to remind everyone that we really support nature-based solutions where possible. And so I think, while that's pervasive in the Coastal Resiliency Plan, if we're going to come up with a statement, just kind of keeping that in mind, including that in any way possible. My 2 cents for that.
Thank you, Sarah. Joanna, do you have anything you want to add to this discussion?
Thank you, Mary. I think doing the homework assignment is fine. I agree with Sarah. I think that, expanding beyond the comments that are in the coastal resiliency plan, I'm not sure I agree. And I think I also am a little bit concerned that this issue will overshadow some of the other things that we're working on. And I think it has already had such momentum and has been such a distraction from the work of the Coastal Resiliency Committee to begin with, that I worry that continuing to focus on it will only take away some of our momentum on some of these other issues. And I think you already know this, and I feel like it today. I definitely feel like it's time for us to break into smaller groups and really try to get some of this work done, because we can continue to have these meetings and talk in our larger scale group, but I feel like we're not really advancing the ball down the court as quickly as we should be. And so I really feel strongly that we should break into subcommittees and attack some of these topics and take some action. So thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. Yes, open meeting law and committee work does make it hard to move forward sometimes. Gary, and then
I
Jen.
still would like to, would like to think about the articles that Leah sent out, where there were these 3 different categories. And I don't remember what the 3 categories are. The first one is defend. And I think the second is adapt. And maybe the third is retreat. Now, what we've already said in our plan with respect to, I think it's 17 homes in Mattakit, we know that we're not going to defend them. We're not going to adapt them. They're gone, right? Long-term plan. When we put the plan together, we said, I forget, Vince, is it 17 homes or 27 homes? But there was a group of homes that we looked at and said, there is no way anyone's going to save these, and we're not going to take our time, energy, or money to, right? So that's one category. And so the other 2 categories are defend, and I think the harbor, the ferry terminal is probably defend. But if we don't defend that, then no one's getting on the island. No people and no trucks, okay? So there's a defend. And the middle strategy is probably adapt. So my question is, when I look at the Sconset Bluff, I'm looking at managed retreat, so that thinking that the Baxter Road replacement will allow the community continue to have access to the homes there on a different road. Does anyone think that we should have a different strategy with respect to Sconset Bluff, the entire Sconset Bluff area? Does anyone think it should be a defend like we do with the harbor, the ferry terminal, or even adapt? I'll be curious to know what my fellow committee members think of those 3 strategies. Where does Sconset Bluff fit?
Thank you, Gary. Would you like me to read the paragraph that describes what England has for strategies?
Well, the 3, if it has the 3 ones, that would remind me.
All right, so the email that was sent out to committee members was an article from the New York Times on coastal erosion in Great Britain. The quote from the article, in England, the costs of building sea defenses are shared by national and local offices. On the national level, a funding calculator assesses how much of the £5.2 billion budget is potentially available. It depends on whether the benefits are greater than the costs, based on a timeline of erosion and 4 location-specific policy tiers. Advance the line, where new defenses extend the land area out to the sea. Hold the line, where new defenses maintain the existing shoreline. Managed realignment, in which the shoreline is allowed to erode, but money is spent to direct it in certain areas. And no active intervention, where no national funds are invested. So that's something we haven't really talked about, is extending defenses from the land area out into the sea. Although the breakwater project might fall into that category. So I think, Gary, your point was that.
But it's really those 3 strategies we ought to understand, and we ought to pick and choose, and saying, well, when we're looking at what's going on with respect to the threats to various parts of the island, which are defend, which are adapt, and which are retreat. To manage retreat, but still. We can't have it all. We can't defend them all.
And a note for the minutes, we'll put that link to that article in the minutes so it's available to everyone since we've referenced it here. Actually, let's, again, sorry, note for the minutes. The quote that I just read should be verbatim in the minutes. I think that will be helpful, and then the link to the article. So thank you for indulging me on that. I'm sorry, so we're looking for responses, Gary, to your question. Do you want to
Those
restate it?
3 strategies, yeah.
And you're asking specifically about Sconset Bluff?
Yes,
Carl, did you want to respond?
Well, I just had a quick comment, Madam Chair. Can you link the North Carolina article as well into the minutes?
Sure. Was there a particular section that you want me to read out?
I don't think I need it. I read it, but it might be nice to have it in the minutes for folks.
Sure.
Thanks.
Thank you. So does anyone want to respond to Gary's question? I think you're asking, what do we feel is the appropriate strategy for the Sconset Bluff?
long term.
Is it to hold the line, to maintain the existing shoreline, to allow the managed realignment where the shoreline is allowed to erode, but money is spent to direct it to certain areas, or no intervention? Or some, similar concept. Jen?
Sure, thank you, Mary. I mean, I'm happy to weigh in on that a little bit to Gary. I think that's the process we kind of went through with the coastal resilience plan and how we identified our retreat areas and the areas that we thought would be most beneficial to have significant protection, like town sewer beds. What are the places that, we aren't willing to give up? What are the places that we know we're going to have to adapt in some way? And then I think what we're getting to with this long, conversation about Sconset Bluff and the work that the consultants did out there, and it's what are those interventions or what are those adaptations that we're doing while we're moving towards the solutions that are in the coastal resilience plan. So I think, this kind of goes into the comment I was going to make. If we have to make a specific statement about the Sconset Bluff area, that's a recommendation to the select board, I think we can do it, but it's almost the same recommendation that I would like to see made for the entire island. And it's, as we're moving forward, how are we assessing particular areas of the island for what our actions are going to be? This whole neighborhood idea or location idea of adaptation. I think that's one of our, recommendations. We made it already, is that it can't be property by property. We need a larger scale assessment of what we want in an area, protect, retreat, etc. And we have some of that already in the CRP. And how are we going to get there as a town? And I think looking at taking Sconset Bluff as an example, we've already made some of those recommendations. The town has gone and gotten consultants to look at possible interventions. And honestly, from my standpoint, it would be our recommendation as a Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee would be to figure out what your alternatives are, get a consultant to assess what that looks like and what cost is and how you would go about it, and make sure that those conversations include your regulatory body like the Concom, and you can figure out what you can actually permit and not permit. I mean, at this point, I don't know that I would give a specific recommendation to the town to say, you must do X, Y, and Z at Sconset Bluff right now. You already have options that are put in front of you. So assess those, we're assessing those options, do that in consultation with your regulatory body and however you're going to fund it, and get that put into place. I don't necessarily think it's our job to pick apart the different solutions that have been offered by a consultant the town is paid to do the work. I think it's to say, okay, yeah, we can approve the fact that they've done this work and it's in line with the kind of interventions that we would expect. Or, they put forward, recommendations that don't make sense to us as a body. But I think that to me, it seems that work has already been done. And if we need to do a recommendation for just Sconset Bluff, I think it can be along those lines. But I would actually like to see us push more recommendations for saying, if you're putting this amount of time into Sconset Bluff, you should be doing it for Brant Point. You should be doing it for the sewer beds. We should be doing it for Mataket. So those are my thoughts I wanted to share.
Thank you, Jen. Any further comment? All right, Carl, I know that you are working on a presentation for our June 13th meeting. Would you prefer to defer that and work on a homework assignment from this meeting instead? Or are you prepared to go forward on June 13th with the other project you're working on?
Madam Chair, there was a question from Ms. Hill about a separate presentation that's scheduled. I don't know if you saw that email.
Yeah, that's not an issue.
Okay, then I'm prepared for June 13th, as opposed to the 27th, or I could do it the 27th, whatever you folks would like. But
Yeah,
I can get ready for June 13th.
Right, the question, and sorry, referencing the scheduling, we have a speaker lined up for June 13th. We can certainly accommodate a second topic in the meeting, but it would be a stretch to accommodate 3. And so given that we have 1 slot filled, what I'm asking Carl is, I guess I'm asking, can I move you from the 13th to the 27th so that we can do a homework assignment and continue to discuss that on the 13th?
Absolutely, I can present on the 27th.
Great. Okay, so what I'm going to ask everyone to do, and we will follow up with the members who are not present, I'm going to ask you to write a statement that you individually support as a recommendation to come from the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee to the Select Board. That statement can range from the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee offers no additional advice on the Sconset Bluff situation, to the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee recommends a specific course of action, and anything in between. So there's no prescription about what that statement should be, but I would like each individual to provide a statement. And what we will do on the administrative side is review those and see if, with the context of the Coastal Resilience Plan, if we can come up with a statement that encompasses at least most of the perspectives, obviously potentially not all, and see if that's something that we can bring back to the meeting and agree on. Now, as I'm thinking about this, I'm wondering if it's feasible by June 13th. We do have 3 weeks between now and then. We've got an extra week in May, giving us a little extra time. So let's see. Do people think that by next Friday, June 2nd, they have the ability to submit a statement? So a week from this Friday, and it's over the Memorial Day weekend. All right, I've got 1 thumbs up and a nod. All right, so that is the assignment. By Friday the 2nd, please submit a statement, send it to Leah, and I'll take a look at those over the weekend, try and absorb them, and I'll work with Leah and Vince that following week to prepare something that we can put on an agenda for our meeting on June 13th. Thank you all. Next item on our agenda is public comment. Are there any members of the public present that want to offer a comment at this time? I am not seeing any members of the public. So next item is new business, Committee of Natural Resources Department reports. So we have a note on the agenda, date for the Sea Grant, June 12th. There's a link there for the registration. It will be live streamed as well as in-person attendance, and there should be a recording at some point in the future. Other reports? Carl?
Madam Chair, I had a request for 3 minutes on the floor. Wasn't sure if I'm new at this, so in this committee, so I wasn't sure if I should do it at public comment or during new business. Can you advise me on that? I would like to request 3 minutes of the floor for some funding discussion of CR projects.
So you are not a member of the public, so it would not be appropriate under public comment, but you're certainly welcome to bring it up here.
Okay, whenever you would like to give me that time, that would be great.
And now is fine.
Okay. All right. This is just something that I cooked up the other day. And I think you folks are probably maybe familiar with it. Mr. Fee, I I think through you, Madam Chair, I think Mr. Fee is probably familiar with what I'm going to say. I don't think we have to have a lengthy conversation about this today, but I'd like to bring this to the floor of the meeting and bring it up. Funding for CR projects. The embarkation fee has been previously discussed. Meals and room taxes, fees, question mark. Embarkation and arrival fee, Nantucket Memorial Airport passenger fees. And what I'm about to say is something that is a possible source of significant funding for coastal resilient projects on the island. Offshore wind farm host community agreements. Vineyard Wind 1 has a $16 million agreement with the town over 8 years. $4 million was transferred to the Community Foundation of Nantucket per that agreement in November of 21, when they started construction on Vineyard Wind 1. Future payments will be administered in the next 6 or 7 years or so. Mr. Fee, through you, Madam Chair, can the select board negotiate more community host agreements with South Coast Wind, Park City, Commonwealth, Vineyard Wind 2, Bay State Wind, and several others out there? There's a potential with further host community agreements for $100 to $200 million. These energy companies are worth billions, not millions. They're global. So anyway, and we could use that money to fund local CR projects. I've been saying this for a long time, and I'm kind of a lone wolf. So this is a significant source of funding potential for the town. Select board and the town manager need to do this, in my opinion. They've been approved by the federal government, you know, Avangrid is owned by Iberdrola, which is a Spanish energy company globally. And Avangrid is doing Vineyard Wind 1, Park City, Commonwealth, and Vineyard Wind 2. And they have been amenable to agreements with the town that Don Hill Holgate signed as chair of the select board in 2021. So I'm just putting this on the record, getting it on the table here. If we want to fund these projects on Nantucket Island, doing business with these energy companies out there, in my opinion, as a wind energy advocate, could provide a significant source of money for this. And that's just what I wanted to say. And I appreciate having the floor, Madam Chair. You know, this is a very controversial, polarizing issue. There are issues of National Historic Landmark and people are scared. I'm not going to get into that right now. What I want to focus on is the fact that if you get $100 to $200 million out of these guys to fund CR projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. I'm going to ask Matt not to respond since this is a topic that we do not have posted on the agenda for discussion, but I certainly will bring it to a future agenda for discussion. Thank you, Carl. There is more information available about that, so I want to make sure we have all the resources that we need. Jeff?
Yes, thank you, Mary. Just one quick public comment from me. I know it's not on the agenda tonight, but I wanted to let everyone know we finally got it scheduled. But the first kind of public information and public input session for the Nantucket and Natticut Harbors Plan update is on Monday, June the 5th from 6 to 8 p.m. in the conference room of the Nantucket Hotel. So we'll have flyers and information up, but we're just looking to get input from any member of the public related to the harbor plan update. We'll hopefully have a couple more through the summer, but this is the first one. But just hopefully to get it on everyone's schedules and anyone that has any sort of outreach bandwidth that's interested in getting that to, you know, to members or friends or family. Monday, June the 5th, 6 to 8 p.m. Hopefully we'll see everyone there.
And that's at the Nantucket Hotel on Easton Street, right, Jeff?
Correct.
Okay. I think I saw a hand up, Leah.
Thank you, Mary. I also want to announce that on June 1st at 4 p.m. via Zoom, there'll be a public hearing for the updated wetlands regulations, and that is a CRP recommendation. So if anybody wants to attend that when I get the Zoom meeting link. I'll send it to everyone. I will also send everyone the live stream link for the conference once I receive that. And then Vince and I we're looking into a couple of grants. So I just wanted to give a little update with that. The CZM grant, so one of them came out that has to do with stormwater, but the Coastal Resilience Grant should be out soon. And again, just to remind everyone, we'll be applying for the neighborhood flood barrier phase 1 for the CZM grant when that does come out. We're also exploring another grant. It's called PROTECT. It's an acronym, and that is through the DOT, and it's coastal resilience grants that have to do with roadways. So we're looking to see if actually a couple projects from the CRP would fit under the evacuation route grant. So that's due in late August. We're just trying to figure out if we have the capacity to apply for it, and if we do get it, to manage it.
Thank you, Leah. Vince?
I love acronyms, and Leah alluded to it, so I'm just going to read the acronym for PROTECT. It just it's a federal one. Promoting resilient operations for transformative, effective, and cost-saving transportation program. And
You
it's
worked
a
hard on that.
partisan infrastructure law section.
Thank you, Vince. Further updates from committee members or staff? Right, discussion of upcoming meeting dates and topics. We've already covered a couple of things there, but wanted to highlight that Arnold Robinson from Fussin O'Neill and Kate Michaud, the town administrator of Warren, Rhode Island, have agreed to speak to us about a project that they have kicked off there. It looks really interesting. It has some elements that we haven't really discussed before, so I'm looking forward to speaking with them. Leah reached out to them, and I had a conversation with Arnold that was really a great conversation. He is familiar with Nantucket, so that's also a plus. And we look forward to hosting them on the 13th. They were also briefly mentioned in the presentation at the Nantucket Historical Association that Claire Martin and Rachel Freeman did, and there's a link in the agenda to that presentation, although it won't tell you much about the Market to Metacom proposal, but their presentation was actually something I would recommend watching in any case. As always, we are welcome to put new topics on the agenda, so thank you, Carl, for suggesting one. And any other member of the committee is also welcome to suggest one. If there's any other conversation about upcoming meeting dates, I don't think we have a holiday issue in July. We're not affected by the 4th. We're not affected by June 19th for the Juneteenth holiday, so we dodged a couple of holidays there. We'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Matt.
Second,
Thank you, Carl. Roll call vote, Gary Beller,
Aye.
Claire Boyce,
Aye.
Bob Borchert,
aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Jen Carberg,
Aye.
Joanna Roach,
Aye.
Mary Longacre, aye. Thank you all. We'll see you in a few weeks, and don't forget your homework.